I woke up strapped to a hospital bed, and I couldn't move. For a second, I thought I was already dead. Something was pressed over my face, a plastic tube tight against my upper lip. A faint hiss as air pushed into my nose. My eyes opened slowly, stinging against the light. It was much too bright. Everything felt wrong. I blinked a few times, trying to focus, and the room came together in flashes. The blinds, half torn down and hanging loose, twisted slightly in the breeze. The window behind them was smashed. The room was too quiet. Something about the silence felt off. I turned my head slightly, and pain flared through my side, sharp enough to make me suck in a breath. "Shit!" I gasped. I lay there for a second, breathing through it. Then I looked toward the door. It wasn't closed properly. It moved, just slightly, back and forth, nudged by the wind coming in through the broken window. There was a slow, uneven creak each time it shifted outward. The hallway beyond the door was almost completely dark. Only the emergency lights were on, dim, red, and uneven. They flickered weakly along the ceiling, cutting the corridor into broken pieces of light and shadow. Every time they dipped, the darkness swallowed everything beyond the doorway. Then they buzzed back on again, just enough light to show how empty it was beyond. "Hello?" I called out. The words scraped out of my throat, dry and rough. I winced, swallowing against it. There was no answer, not even an echo. Just the sound of the wind pushing through the broken window behind me. Low, unsteady, moving things it shouldn't. Then a metallic clang, ringing from somewhere down the corridor, reverberating into my room. It didn't sound far. I looked down at my side. A thick dressing was taped across my ribs, pulling slightly at the skin. The edges had started to yellow, and the centre was dark. Soaked through, the blood dried stiff against it. As I shifted, pain tore through me, sharp and deep, like the wound was still open. I sucked in a breath and froze, every muscle locking up as the pain spread through my chest. "Yeah," I muttered under my breath. "That's not good." Someone had been here. They'd patched me up, stopped the bleeding. But they were gone now. I looked down at my wrists. Thick leather straps held them tight against the bed frame, the edges biting into my skin. I tried to flex my fingers, but they didn't move properly. Slow, numb. The tips had already started to turn blue. Why the hell would they strap me down and leave me here? I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to pull something back. Anything. The club. Music. Loud. Bass thumping through the floor. A guy getting too close to the girl on the dance floor. Her face angry, pushing him off. And then me, stepping in. "All right, mate, time to go." His friend shouting, him squaring up. I dragged him outside anyway to the alley. Cold air, quieter. And then, a flash of movement, something in his hand. And the pain. Not a stab, not at first. Just pressure, and then heat. Then it all hit at once. I gasped, my eyes snapping open as the memory dropped away. Another clang rang up the corridor, closer this time. I gripped the bed with my fingertips. There was something about it, not random, not an accident. It came again. Slower, more deliberate. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. I just listened. Then, footsteps. No, not quite. Something dragged itself along the corridor outside my room. Slow, uneven, and getting closer. I held my breath as it reached the doorway, and stopped. Right there. The smell hit me a second later. Rotten, thick, wrong. I swallowed hard, forcing the bile down. My stomach turned as the smell filled the room. Whatever it was, it didn't come in. It just stood there, breathing heavily, like it was listening. It stayed locked on the spot outside for a few seconds. The only sound was the faint hiss of oxygen and a slow, uneven scrape just beyond the doorway. Then it shifted. A slow, dragging step. Then another. The sound faded down the corridor, uneven and distant, until it was swallowed by the silence again. I stayed exactly as I was, counting the seconds in my head. 5, 10, 15. Still nothing. Only then did I let breath out of my lungs. Slow and controlled, like even that might be too loud. "Okay," I whispered, my eyes dropping to the straps around my wrists. "Time to get the hell out of this thing." I started working my left hand against the strap, twisting my fingers, trying to create just enough space to slip free. Pain flared immediately, sharp, deep. It spread across my ribs and up into my chest, stealing the breath from my lungs. I twisted again, forcing my thumb inward, grinding it against the leather as it dug into my skin. For a second, I thought it wasn't going to give. Then it shifted. Just enough. I dragged my hand through, teeth clenched as the leather scraped across my knuckles. My hand slipped free with a dull pop. I drew in a breath as the blood rushed back into my fingers, pins and needles hitting all at once, sharp and burning. I clenched my fist. Once, twice, forcing the feeling back into it. Then I sat completely still for a few seconds, listening, waiting for confirmation that whatever had been outside hadn't returned. It was still silent outside the room. I reached for the other strap. My fingers fumbled with the clasp, clumsy, still half numb. "Come on," I hissed under my breath. It stuck. I swallowed, glancing toward the door. Still open, still dark. I forced myself to slow down, working the clasp carefully this time. Then it clicked free. The strap loosened, and I pulled my arm free, rubbing hard at the skin where it had dug in, trying to bring it back to life. I waited until the feeling came back into my hand, slow, prickling, and painful. Then I pushed myself upright. The movement hit me immediately, and pain tore through my side, sharp enough to make my vision blur for a second. I grabbed at the edge of the bed, holding on as it passed. Easy, I thought. I swung my legs over the side, the bed creaking slightly as I shifted my weight. For a second I just sat there, breathing through it. Then my feet touched the floor. Cold tile. The shock of it made me flinch, and the movement sent another spike of pain through my ribs. Harder this time. A sound caught in my throat. I bit down on it, jaw tightening, forcing it back. I didn't want to make any noise that would bring whatever had been outside back to investigate. I stayed there for a moment, hunched forward, waiting for the pain to settle enough to move again. I pushed myself up after a few seconds, and immediately lost my balance. My legs buckled from underneath me, weak and unsteady. I stumbled forward, bare feet hitting the floor, and glass crunched beneath them. Sharp. I sucked in a breath as it bit into the skin, my foot slipping slightly as I tried to catch myself. My hand shot out, missing the bed completely, and slammed into something metal. The IV stand. It wobbled for half a second, then toppled onto the floor. The sound exploded through the room, metal clattering against tile, and reverberated off down the corridor. I froze, every muscle locked on the spot, listening. Footsteps. No, not footsteps. That same dragging sound, coming back, closer and fast. It was uneven, wrong. My chest tightened as it rushed up the corridor toward the room. And then I heard it. A low, guttural sound. A groan, thick and broken, forcing its way out like it hurt to make it. And it was getting louder. I didn't want to know what was making that sound. My eyes darted around the room, looking for any escape, any hiding place. 4 floors up, the window offered no options. Then my gaze dropped back to the bed. I ripped a pillow from the bed, yanking it free and shoving the fabric between my teeth, and I bit down hard. Then I dropped. The impact sent a jolt of pain through my ribs, and I screwed up my face in agony, but the pillow smothered my moan. I dragged myself under the bed, pulling my body in inch by inch, twisting awkwardly around the base. Every movement scraped at the wound in my side, sending bursts of pain through my body. I clenched my jaw tight, breathing slowly through my nose and forcing myself to stay quiet. The door moved. Slow, deliberate. It swung inward, then tapped lightly against the wall. The smell hit me instantly, rotten, thick, and overpowering. It filled the room. For a second, there was nothing. Then, something dragged across the floor. Close, closer, and then I saw them. Feet, mottled grey skin, stretched tight in places and split in others. The nails were thick, yellowed and curling at the ends. They scraped lightly against the tile as it moved. Another low, wet groan slipped out of it, echoing around the room. Under the bed, I went completely still. The feet stopped, right in front of me, inches away. I didn't dare breathe. Then they shifted. A dry crack rang out from its ankle as the joint twisted, the legs bending down. I eased backward, inching further under the bed. Then I saw it. A knee. Purple veins spidering across pale, stretched skin. The smell was unbearable. 4 fingers slid into view, curling around the underside of the frame. The nails were long, sharp, and they stabbed into the mattress above me. This was it. A violent shriek echoed from the corridor. It tore through the room, loud and sudden, close enough to make my whole body jolt. The feet jerked back, the hand vanished, and the knee snapped upright. For a second, it just stood there. Then it made a sound, high, sharp, and twisted. Not pain, something else. Its weight shifted, fast and uneven, turning toward the door. Another dragging step, then another, and then it was gone, pulling itself out into the corridor, drawn toward the noise. I stayed where I was, completely still, counting in my head without meaning to. I reached 30 before I moved. I ripped the pillow from my mouth and dragged in a breath, deep and shaking. I stayed under the bed for a few more seconds, listening. But there was nothing, no dragging, no movement, just the faint hum of the building, and my own breathing, still too loud in my ears. I pushed the pillow aside and started to move, carefully, one hand after the other, dragging myself out from under the bed, inch by inch. Every shift pulled at the wound in my side, sending sharp jolts of pain through my entire body. When I finally cleared the edge of the bed, I pushed myself up, crouching low on the floor, waiting. Still nothing. I raised my head, and the room looked different now. Not empty, not quiet, but like the walls were closing in around me. I scanned the area. Something on the floor caught my eye. Metal glinting in the light from outside. A pair of surgical scissors, discarded, half hidden among the shattered glass. I moved toward them slowly, keeping low. Every step was agony, but I gritted my teeth and kept moving. I reached out carefully, my fingers closing around the handle of the scissors. They were cold, slippery, but I tightened my grip, lifting them clear from the floor, careful not to let the handle scrape against the tiles. Then I held them there for a second. They weren't much, but it was something. I kept them low at my side, gripped tightly in my hand as I glanced toward the door. It still creaked as it swayed in the wind. I edged closer, keeping tight to the frame, and leaned just enough to peer round. The corridor beyond stretched away into the darkness. Emergency lights flickered overhead, throwing long, broken shadows across overturned gurneys and scattered wheelchairs. Nothing moved. I waited there for a few seconds, watching, half expecting more dragging footsteps. Still nothing. That didn't mean anything, though. I tightened my grip on the scissors. Then, slowly, I shifted my weight and slipped out from behind the doorframe. One step into the corridor. Then another. Every sound felt too loud. I stumbled blindly along the left wall, keeping my free hand against it as I went. Then something wet. My hand slid across it and I jerked back instantly, my breath catching as I stared down at my fingers. Dark, thick. The emergency light flickered overhead, and for a split second I saw it clearly. Blood, smeared across the wall. Old, but not that old. It clung to my skin, sticky, dragging between my fingers as I flexed them. I wiped my hand against my hospital gown, my stomach turning. Jesus, I thought. I shuddered and kept moving, step by step. The flickering light gave me just enough to see where I was putting my feet. I navigated past the hospital beds, past the wheelchairs, and around the debris scattered on the floor. Then I brushed against one of the chairs. It shifted. My hand shot out, catching the handle as I tried to steady it. I was too hard. It rolled back an inch. Then something dropped from the seat in front of me. Heavy. It hit the floor right by my feet. The light flickered again, and I looked down, my entire body going stiff. Something lay at my feet. A body, no, not quite. Bare skin, grey-blue, stretched over tight muscle that looked wrong. A strip of cloth hung loosely around its waist. Its arms had twisted at an angle that didn't look natural. And the hand, those same hooked fingers that I'd seen under the bed. My stomach dropped. The light stuttered again, and I saw its face. Eyes wide, pale and empty, staring straight past me. And there was a hole in its forehead. Clean, dark, straight through. I swallowed hard, forcing it back down. The smell, the sight of it. I didn't move, just stood and listened in the dark. Seconds stretched, but nothing came. No dragging, no sound from the corridor. But that didn't mean it was gone. I stepped over the body and kept moving. Slow, careful, every step measured. The corridor bent ahead, disappearing around a corner. I stopped just before it, listening ahead. But there was still nothing. So I edged forward, turning the corner inch by inch. Light spilled across the floor from further down the hall. A door, glass panel set into the top half. I moved toward it, keeping close to the wall, my grip tightening around the scissors. Closer, closer. I stopped just outside and listened again. No sound was coming from inside, no movement. Slowly, I reached out and pressed the handle down. The latch gave. I pushed the door open just enough to look through. Rows of beds, separated by thin blue curtains. Every single bay occupied by long black bags, zip closed, completely still. A yellow symbol stamped across each one. Biohazard. Flies buzzed lazily through the air. The smell hit me a second later. Fetid. Heavy. Death. The heat hit me as soon as I stepped inside. The HVAC was dead and the stale air in the room wasn't moving. I pulled my gown up over my nose, but the smell pushed through anyway, thick and cloying. I moved between the beds slowly, scissors held low at my side. Every step felt wrong. Too loud, too exposed. I stopped at the first bed. A chart hung loosely from the frame, clipped on in a hurry, and dark stains dotted the page. Dried blood. I crouched down just long enough to read it, not taking my eyes off the room for long. Lines of writing, medical terms that I didn't understand. Something about trauma, cranial occlusion? I skipped down. Cause of death. Now that I understood, and my eyes caught the last line. YZT1 outbreak. What the hell? Fabric rustled behind me. The sound cut through the room. I span, bringing the scissors up instinctively. But there was nothing. Just rows of beds, still and silent. I held there for a moment, just watching and waiting, and the light flickered overhead. But there was no movement. No sound. Then the noise came again, closer this time, from somewhere among the beds. My grip tightened around the scissors. I didn't move. A new sound followed, slow and deliberate. A low, wet groan came from inside one of the bags, dragging its way out of something that shouldn't be making noise at all. My heart pounded against my ribcage. The bag opposite me shifted, not much, just a small movement at first. Then it twitched again, harder this time. The plastic stretched tight across whatever was inside, pulling and jerking as it tried to move. I raised the scissors without thinking, my grip tightening around the handle. My arm was already starting to shake. The bag jerked, then tore. Not clean, the zip split apart under strain as something forced its way through from inside, fabric ripping open in jagged lines. A hand burst out first. Then the rest of it followed. It dragged itself free, twisting awkwardly, snarling, wet, broken sounds spilling from its throat. I stumbled back, hitting the edge of the bed hard enough to knock the breath from my lungs. It didn't pause. Its head snapped toward me. Too fast, the movement wrong. Those eyes empty and locked directly on me. Its jaw hung loose, twitching. Then it screamed and came straight at me. I threw myself sideways, not clean, just enough to get out of the way. Its hand swept past my face, close enough that I felt it. Then it slammed into the bed. The whole frame shuddered under the impact, metal screeching against the floor. I scrambled, trying to get my feet from under me, but pain tore through my side, stealing the strength from my legs. The creature was already turning, too fast. I swung the scissors without thinking. Wild, clumsy, the blade caught its shoulder, tearing through the flesh like it wasn't even there. No blood, just grey skin splitting open. It didn't react, didn't slow, it just kept coming. It lunged at me again. Too fast. I tried to move, but my foot slipped on the tile. Then it hit me like a freight train. Its weight crashed into my chest, driving me back onto the floor, the impact pushing the air from my body. I barely got my arms up in time. Its hand slammed into my shoulders, pinning me down. They were cold, wrong, too strong. I shoved back, straining against it, my arms shaking as I tried to keep it off me. Its head jerked forward, then snapped back. Then forward again, rapid, unpredictable. Its jaw hung loose, teeth snapping inches from my face, bloody sputum spraying from its throat. The smell hit me full force now, rotten and suffocating. I turned my head, trying to keep it away as its teeth clacked shut right next to my cheek. The creature shifted its weight. Just enough. I didn't think, I just drove the scissors upward. They punched into the side of its neck, sinking deeper than I expected. The thing spasmed, a broken shriek tearing out of it, but it didn't stop. I yanked the blade free, and it came at me again, closer. Its teeth snapped down inches from my face. I swung again, wildly. The scissors tore across its cheek, splitting the skin open. Still nothing, still coming. "Get the fuck off me," I shouted, driving the scissors forward again, harder this time. They struck bone. A sharp crack, and the resistance gave way. The blade plunged into its temple. The creature went slack instantly. All of its weight toppled onto me at once, crushing me beneath its chest. Pain ripped through my side as I shoved the creature off me and dragged myself to the side. I was gasping for air. Then, scraping from the corridor outside. Footsteps, uneven, moving quick, and not just one set. Another shriek tore through the air, closer this time. They were coming. I forced myself up, pain flaring through my side as I staggered to my feet, my eyes locked on the doorway. Too late. I couldn't go back that way. I turned on the spot. There, another door. I started moving, half run, half stumble, barely keeping my balance as pain tore through my ribs. Behind me, the sound was getting closer. Too close. Dragging footsteps, fast now, spilling into the room. I hit the door hard, shoulder first, shoving it wide open. The impact rattled through me as I pushed into the corridor beyond. I risked a glance back. One of them was already inside. It saw me instantly, and its head snapped toward me, and it gave chase, shrieking loudly. I lurched forward, forcing my legs to move. More pain tore through my side with every step, sharp enough to make my vision blur. Behind me, too close. I could hear them now. More than one, and they were gaining on me. I stumbled over a wheelchair, catching myself at the last second as it rolled under my foot. I nearly went down. A clawed hand swept past my back, close enough that I felt it brush my gown. I kicked the chair behind me without thinking. It crashed into them, metal slamming against bone. Bodies collided in a tangle of limbs and noise. It bought me just a second, maybe less, but I didn't look back, I just ran. I couldn't stop. Behind me the noise was getting louder. Dragging footsteps spilled into the corridor. Overlapping now, and too many to track. They were getting too close. My legs were starting to give out, every step sending a sharp, tearing pain through my side. My foot slipped on a bedsheet, and I slammed into the wall, catching myself at the last second. "Come on," I shouted. "Keep moving!" I pushed off again, forcing myself forward. The corridor ahead narrowed, choked with overturned gurneys and scattered equipment. I tried to squeeze through, knocking into metal, sending it clattering across the floor. But there was no way through. Not fast enough. I skidded to a halt, chest heaving, eyes darting left to right. There, a door, half open. I didn't think, I just threw myself at it, slamming into the wood hard enough to jar my shoulder as I forced my way inside. I spun, dragging the door shut behind me. Something hit it immediately, and hard. The whole frame shuddered. There was another impact, wood shards bursting from the door as it bucked inward. Then another, each one stronger than the last. I staggered back, breathing hard, my eyes scanning the room. Laundry. Industrial machines lined the walls, silent and dead. Metal tables, baskets, and sheets piled high in loose stacks. There was nowhere to go. Another slam hit the door, the hinges groaning under the strain. "Shit! Shit!" I shouted. I backed away, turning in a slow circle. No windows, no second door. Nothing. Then I saw it, something in the far corner, a square opening in the wall. A chute. I stared at it for a second. It was too small, too narrow. Another impact shook the door, and cement dust rained down from the ceiling. It wasn't going to hold. I stumbled toward the chute, my vision blurring as pain pulsed through my body. I grabbed the edge and pulled myself up, peering into the darkness. Nothing but a steep drop. No light, no way to see where it went. Behind me, the door split. Shards of wood burst inward as something forced its way through. I didn't hesitate. I hauled myself up, twisting awkwardly and forcing my shoulders into the opening. The metal bit into my sides as I pushed through, barely fitting. Footsteps rushed toward me, and I dropped. The whole world flipped. I crashed against the inside of the chute, bouncing hard off the metal as I slid down, pain exploding through my ribs. I was going too fast, no control. Then, impact. I hit the ground hard, the air blasting from my lungs as I slammed onto cold concrete. For a second, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just lay there staring up into the darkness above me. Then the pain hit. Everywhere. Worse than before. I dragged in a broken breath, coughing as I rolled onto my side. Move! I forced my body forward, inch by inch, dragging myself across the floor. The room was darker down here. Colder. The air thick with the same smell. Ahead, there was light. Faint, but it was there. Double doors, glass panels, an exit! I clawed my way toward it, my fingers slipping against the floor as I dragged myself forward. Behind me, something hit the chute. A hollow, metallic clang echoed down toward me. Then another. They'd found it. I didn't look back. I just kept crawling. I dragged myself forward. Every inch of me felt like it was tearing apart. My arms shook under my weight, dragging against the concrete as I pulled myself closer to the doors. The light beyond them flickered, hazy, almost unreal. So close! Behind me there was a crash. Metal rang out as something slammed down the chute, the noise echoing through the room. Then another. They were coming. Come on, I begged. I clawed forward again, fingers scraping, my legs trailing uselessly behind me. The doors loomed larger now. I could see shapes through the glass. Daylight outside, movement, shapes shifting beyond the doors. For a second, I thought my vision was failing me. Then, the doors burst inward. Figures rushed through, fast and controlled, weapons raised. Gunfire erupted, sharp and deafening in the small space. Muzzle flashes lit the room in rapid bursts as rounds tore past me, slamming into the darkness behind. The things coming out of the chute dropped instantly, collapsing in a heap of twisted limbs. More shots rang out, precise, relentless. Silence followed. Just like that. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, my body going slack against the floor. I was saved. Boots moved around me. Voices, sharp, urgent, cut through the ringing in my ears. I tried to turn my head, to look at them, to say something. Anything. Then a shadow fell over me. A rifle lowered. Wait! The words barely left my mouth. Something slammed into the side of my head, and a blinding flash of white exploded behind my eyes. And everything dropped away. Darkness swallowed me whole.